All right. Just a brief introduction to what this the Rotary Passport Club is, why it came about, and what we're all about, what we're hoping to accomplish here in the future. Rotary is, by nature, just the organization itself is about service. It's service above self is our primary goal, and it's about reaching as many people as possible with our ability to make things better throughout the world. And that would be our district governor who just joined us, Bruce McNeil, up there. So thank you, Bruce. I'm so glad you're here. So Rotary's longstanding foundation have had a lot of impact. Polio is one of those things, the eradication of it, and we're very close to the goal in doing that. But throughout the world, clubs do a variety of different things. But one of the things about Rotary is it's almost always been an in-person format. And as COVID hit in particular, Rotary was slow to change and embrace the technology that's available these days. I mean, they've been very entrenched in all of the components of being face-to-face and meeting those people and working together arm in arm. But with COVID, it forced everybody to look at alternatives to still get together. And it allowed clubs like the Passport Clubs, there's some e-clubs, they're very similar in what they are, what they do, to come about. In some of our other clubs, we still conduct hybrid meetings where they are filming or videotaping during the club, sometimes live streaming during those live club meetings. So you have people both present and online. And it gives us the ability to break down some of the walls. So most Rotary clubs are based in a particular district and then based in a particular region inside that district. I believe we have 40, I want to say 8, Bruce, I don't remember how many we have in our district. But we have
48.
Oh, wow, I'm surprised I got that number right. We have 48 clubs in our particular district. So there's a district governor for that. But with the Passport Club, because we have the ability to reach people all over, in our particular club, we have members throughout our particular district, and we have one who's actually in North Carolina, so not affiliated with our particular district at all, but interested in being a Rotarian. We've linked up with some people that they know who are actually in India, and one of the projects that we would like to get rolling early in the year has to do with a school in India. So we're able to reach further. And one of the nice things that's non-standard about our club is that you don't have to commit as much time. So you're not traveling back and forth to a brick and mortar location. And sometimes we have a little more flexibility with how often you attend, which is why you don't see as much attendance online right now, because people have lives and it gives them an opportunity to fit this in their schedule by doing logins and viewing the recorded message, but still be involved with the greater group. So we still get to network. We still get to bond together as a group, and we've gotten to know each other a lot better over this last year that we've been doing this. We have some challenges in trying to figure out the best way to accomplish service projects, because there's not a group of us right together, but there's still so much talent and so much drive and so much desire to serve other people that it's one of those things that I think that we will come together and figure out as a group. And our goal overall is to continue to bring people together far and wide, people who are like-minded, who want to participate and be engaged, who want to be a part of everything that Rotary stands for. And then on top of it, we get to have presentations and meet people like y'all, which is always exciting. We've had several really good ones last week, or the last meeting was about, it was actually kind of a surprise. It was one thing that I thought was coming in based on what the gentleman worked on. And then as it turned out, he had been deeply involved in Native American culture and advancement for those who are in poverty and have issues with education and you know, that sort of thing. So it's really a pretty neat program to learn things that I don't hear a whole lot about. So I'm excited, and I think the people in our club are excited about the fact that we're going to be able to touch and learn so many different things in so many different areas, and then also accommodate people who are all over the place as they travel in their careers, as they have restrictions in their jobs. You know, educators and healthcare workers can't just leave like I can leave for lunch and go have a lunch meeting. So for somebody like all of y'all, it also gives you the opportunity to travel with your deployments and still be connected to the same group of people and still be a part of something for constant service and help in your communities, which are then become wherever you are. So that's kind of the gist of it. Any questions or thoughts about it that I can answer for y'all?
I learned something every time I listen to Carla. So. I'm sure Larry in the background does too.
Yeah, this is my husband. He's also a member. This is Larry. He's the quiet one in the family. He does the heavy lifting and I do the running of my mouth.
Hey, Carl, I've got a question for you. So have you seen your group grow since teachers now have an opportunity and other, like, just like you said, people that couldn't get out of lunchtime? Have you seen more people participate?
Starting to reach some more. The group started off with about 5. We got up to about 21. Like I said, right now we're at about 17. And as far as people being able to join online and be present, we're usually, it's kind of bad. Sometimes you get on, there's like 3 of us online. And you kind of go, oh, do we go forward? Because you feel kind of bad about people like yourselves who are coming on and you see that and you think nobody really is engaged in what you're delivering, but they are. They're just engaged kind of in the wings. And so, we grow and we shrink. And what our goal is to do to get to the point that we can be solid at about 20 to 25 and fully charter the club and have the full force of Rotary behind us. Right now we're unchartered, but we act and function as a fully functioning Rotary club. So we go through the same process. And I think that we will continue to grow. Word of mouth is great. Membership is always key for Rotary. And I think this is absolutely a platform that people can embrace. So yes, we've talked to a few teachers. I've got 2 who are interested, and then things kind of got sidelined. I have a healthcare director at one of our local places who was scheduled to retire December 31st, and they've roped her into staying, and she's not ready to do the time commitment yet. But as soon as she goes ahead through the retirement, which we expect, I think she's expecting in about 3 more months, then she's going to join. We have a Rotary member who was in actually the local club I'm at now, who had turned in his resignation to Bruce, and Bruce sent me his name, and we told him what this was about and the fact that the time commitment's a little bit different. The ability to still access all of the opportunities that Rotary has to offer is still there. And the dues actually are less than a lot of the brick and mortar clubs, just because you're not having to pay for a meal as well. And so he's going to join. He was on a board meeting tonight, his last board meeting, and he's like, I'm sorry, I wanted to be there. But so we've got some Rotary members who are converting over, who we would have otherwise lost. So I do think that we're going to continue to see membership grow. We're going to reach that level where we can charter. And I think once that happens, I really believe it'll be just continued growth for this club. So.
Thank you.
I see Kelly has said that she would be open to do the benediction. I love volunteers. Thank you, Kelly. And I would love for you to do that, because at this point, I don't believe Bill has made it online. I am one of those people who does not, I don't pray in public great. It's just not one of my fortes. I can stand up and talk to 500 people, but I don't typically do that. So we've taken up part of your time, and I know you have a valuable message, and I don't want this to be all about me. So I would like us to do our pledge and get started with that. Just for the record, so y'all understand what happens with this. When you're doing recitations in groups on Zoom, it doesn't work real well. So there's a lot of echoing, there's a lot of lag, there's a lot of things, so just bear with us. Feel free to mute and say it yourselves if you would like. If not, then feel free to stay online, and I'm good with the echo, but I'll begin with the pledge. If everybody will join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. And Kelly, if you would like to lead us in our invocation, I would love for you to unmute and do that for us.
No, thank you, Carla. And again, my mom was a member of the Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce, so I get the message that you're trying to present. So again, Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather here today to support community civics and the outreach of fellowship, as we gather here today in these troubling times of COVID, to include virtual, to ensure that we help our fellow man. We ask your blessings in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much.
Amen.
I would love, and I know it's going to take just a minute more. I would very much love for each of you who's on to just, at Chris or John, either one, whether you want to give introductions to let us all know who you are, so that we understand this great group that we've got tonight.
Sure, I'd be glad to give introductions if you don't mind, sir.
That
Go
All
ahead.
right. So you know Colonel Ritchie, he's on here with us. Kelly McKay, he just gave the introduction. He's an Army officer, Lieutenant Colonel. We've got Colonel Bobby Hunt. He's going to speak tonight. He is an Air Force officer. Colonel Gary Thompson looks like he's next on my list. He's a Marine Corps officer. We've got Colonel Bailanju. She is going to speak tonight as well. She's an Air Force officer. We've got Bino, what's your last name, buddy? Ambrosio. Yeah, I'm sorry. He is an Italian Air Force officer. He's from Italy, obviously, if he's Italian. We've got Nick Ferronic, another Air Force officer, Lieutenant Colonel. We've got Elizabeth Woodworth. She works with Colonel Ritchie to make this program go. Eric Peterson is an Air Force officer. All the Air Force ones, I think, for the most part, some of them are pilots. We've got Colonel Hunt is not a pilot. We've got a mix of people. So whatever I messed up on, they can speak and correct me now, but that's what we have here.
Yeah, and I had invited a good friend of mine, Frank Windling, who was my predecessor a few years back at the War College as the Marine Corps advisor, lives down in Fairhope. So he's joined in tonight because he's very interested in what you all are doing, Carla.
awesome. Very good. Well, I'm going to turn it over to y'all and let you take over and handle whatever you would like. I'm excited to hear your stories, and take it away.
Excellent, Carla. Thank you very much. I'm gonna start off and introduce you to our speakers. So welcome to the Air War College General Henry Hap Arnold Outreach and Executive Leadership Program. I'm Lieutenant Colonel John Harvey. We welcome you to this event and thank you for your support tonight. We also want to thank Passport Rotary for your support in organizing and hosting this event. We look forward to a long and fruitful relationship. Henry Hap Arnold was born in 1886, 136 years ago. In 1907, Arnold graduated from West Point. Just a few years later, the Wright brothers taught him how to fly. He's one of our earliest military aviators and served with distinction in World War I. In World War II, he became the commander of the Army Air Forces and grew the force to 2.5 million troops and 75,000 aircraft. Hap Arnold, who earned his nickname from associates for his happy disposition, ultimately attained the rank of 5-star general and the title of First General of the Air Force. He died in 1950, having laid the groundwork for the Air Force we have today. We honor his memory with this outreach and executive leadership program and to foster interest in the mission of the Air War College, which is to educate senior military and civilian teammates to serve as critical and strategic thinkers able to serve as national security senior leaders. The Air War College vision is to be the foremost college for air, space, and cyberspace education and thought, preparing the world's best joint senior leaders. Only a small percentage of Air Force officers, colonels and lieutenant colonels, attend the resident program. 3%, along with specially selected Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and Space Force equivalent ranked officers, senior civilian leaders, and international officers from 47 allied nations. Our cohorts are small, only about 229 students, but they work together full-time for 10 months to be the best of the best. They complete substantial reading, writing, and speaking requirements across core courses and electives, resulting in a master's degree in strategic studies. The Air War College is accredited by both the Civilian Accrediting Organization, the Southeast Association of Colleges and Schools, and by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff through rigorous process of accreditation of joint education. We want to create a bridge between the college and the audience to show that the experiences and stories of military members are often like those of the public we serve. The architect of this bridge today are our two speakers, Colonel Bobby Hunt and Lieutenant Colonel Bailanju. After they share their stories, we'll have a question and answer period. So if you want to write your questions in the comments section, I'll keep track of it and bring them up at the end. First off, please welcome our first speaker tonight, Colonel Bobby Hunt. Colonel Hunt is an Air Force officer assigned as a student to the Air War College, Air University, Montgomery, Alabama. He is a career air battle manager with over 21 years of experience. Colonel Hunt enlisted in the Air Force in 1987 and received his commission from Officer Training School in 2000 and has served continuously for over 34 years. He has served in a multitude of positions from command, operational test and evaluation, and staff positions in the United States, Europe, East Asia, and Middle East. Colonel Hunt is a graduate of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, with a Bachelor's of Science in Education and Air Command and Staff College with a Master's of Science in Military Operational Art and Science. Following graduation from Air War College, Colonel Hunt will be assigned as the Deputy Director of Plans and Programs at Air Force Reserve Command. Please welcome Colonel Hunt.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having us come here tonight and be able to share our stories with you. Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about a subject that's very near and dear to me. That's the subject of the stigmatism that asking for help for mental health is a sign of weakness. Now, as you heard, I've been in the Air Force for over 34 years, and I have always heard that you're weak if you go and ask for help. I never had any data to back this up. It's just stories that you always heard. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're not weak. You're not going to be judged differently. And you're not going to impact your career just because you go and ask for help. Now, I want to set a scene for you. I want you to imagine that you're deployed to an active combat zone and you're taking indirect fire. There's explosions going on all around you. 30 yards away, you hear a massive explosion and then loud screams and cries for help. You run to that location. You see injured bodies. They're your fellow warriors. You start to provide first aid and buddy care to them. It's second nature to you. It's the training that we receive. Later on that evening, as you return to your sleeping quarters and start to unwind from the events of the evening, the images, the sounds, the smells, all start running through your head. And it doesn't stop. And it goes on for months. And you don't know what to do. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you that this story is all too real to many of our military personnel. And unfortunately, many of them do not ask for help to be able to get rid of those images. I want to share with you my personal experience. So for me, it started on June 25th, 1996. I was deploying to Dhahran Air Base in Saudi Arabia. I was sitting in an airport in Philadelphia waiting on my aircraft to take us into Ramstein, Germany, when all of a sudden on the television was a breaking news flash. Khobar Towers had just been bombed, and there was numerous fatalities and injuries. The images that they showed of those buildings looked like that of the Oklahoma City bombings. The face of the buildings were completely torn off. See, Khobar Towers is where I was supposed to stay on my deployment. About 30 minutes later, we boarded the airplane and we headed on to Germany. When we landed in Germany, they didn't have any further updates for us other than that we were going to still arrive on time. A few hours later, we boarded back on the airplane and headed into Dhahran. We landed late at night and they had us parked right next to a C-5. They came on board and they told us, hey, you guys are going to have to stay on board. They're loading the flag draped bodies onto the C-5. Now, unfortunately, I had a window seat and I watched as they walked each casket up that ramp. I thought how sad it was. Did I know any of them? And was this going to happen again? Following that deployment, I didn't think about that incident that night, or so I thought. My next incident with combat death was in 2001 when I deployed to Ali Salam Air Base in Kuwait. While I was there, I visited a museum on the base, and in there, they had these photos of the atrocities that the Iraqis had committed against the Kuwaitis, the tortures that they had applied to them. Outside that building, the side of the wall was riddled with bullet marks where the Iraqis had executed them. I walked away from there just thinking to myself, why did you come and see this? Later on in that deployment, I had to go down to Al-Jabar and do some exercise planning. While I was there, I took a tour of the hardened aircraft shelters and looked at the destruction that the United States had done against the Iraqi military with their bunker buster weapons. I was mesmerized by the hole that was put in the bunker, the mangled and twisted rebar. It looked like spaghetti. On the wall, I noticed these rust red stains that kind of look like the image of a body. Our tour guide explained to us that those are called blood angels. See, the force of the explosion is so strong that it liquefies the body into the wall. I didn't think about those two incidents much after that deployment, or so I thought. My third instance was in 2003. I was deployed to Kirkuk Air Base in Iraq. Our unit had set up our radar compound right next to the parking ramp, and on the opposite side, we set up our command post in the base ops building. Right outside of base ops was a helipad, and there was helicopters coming in constantly, bringing injured bodies, transferring them to medical treatment facilities. Now the bodies and the blood were real. It was right there in front of me every single day. And it started to weigh on me. But I knew I couldn't go and ask for help. Or so I thought. I started having problems sleeping. And when I did fall asleep, I'd have nightmares. And those nightmares were always the same. I'd be walking around the desert with a wheelbarrow full of bloody body parts. And I didn't know what to do. But I knew I had to put on a front for my crew because I needed to be strong for them. About 6 months later, we finally got notified that we were going home, that we were being relieved. I was excited. I would finally get to go home and these nightmares would stop. I would be away from this and I wouldn't be seeing this all the time. Unfortunately, when I got home, the nightmares didn't stop. So I turned to alcohol to help kill the pain, to help me sleep. But the nightmares just got worse. My wife started to get concerned. I told her I was fine. I had a handle on it. I didn't have a handle on it. And it was affecting my home life and it was affecting work. I was spiraling out of control. I never had any thoughts of hurting myself, but I knew that I needed to find a way to make this all end. Finally, one Saturday evening after church, as we were walking out, our chaplain was standing there and he shook my hand and he welcomed me back from my deployment. And he asked me if I would come by and see him and talk to him about the deployment. I said, sure. I went to see him that following Monday. And again, Chaplain Andrews welcomed me, asked me how I was doing. Oh, I'm doing fine. He said, you don't seem the same now that you're back. What went on over there? I was like, oh, no, everything's fine. He knew I was lying. He told me that he was there to help and that there was strength in those who asked for help. I finally broke down and I explained to him everything that I had seen. And it seems that we talked for hours. It looks like all of those incidents that I thought I wasn't thinking about had all manifested and piled upon themselves and had come to the surface. Chaplain Andrews finally asked me if he could accompany me to go see mental health. I agreed. There, the wonderful doctors started to listen to my story, help me find ways to be able to deal with these demons. After months of treatment, I started sleeping better. I started to feel like myself. I was happy again. Now came the hard part. I had to open up to my wife, tell her what I'd been going through. She told me she loved me and she would always be there for me. Then I went and I talked to my commander and my supervisor. They said that they thought something was going on, but if I would have needed help, I would have asked. But then they asked me if I would be willing to share my story with the rest of the unit, because maybe some of them were going through the exact same thing. All this time, I thought I was going to be weak if I asked for help. It was just the opposite. My unit was looking to me for strength, and I was strong. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, I'm a colonel now in the United States Air Force. It has not impacted my career because I went to mental health and asked for help. They made me a better officer. They made me a better leader. I ask you to not be afraid to ask somebody if they need help. You might just be the difference in their life, like Chaplain Andrews was for me. Always remember, asking for help does not mean that you're weak, does not mean that you're going to impact your career, does not mean that you're going to be judged negatively. You are strong. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Carla, I see your question, but if you don't mind, we're going to go on to the next speaker and come back to it. All right, our second speaker is Lieutenant Colonel Zhu. Lieutenant Colonel Bailan Zhu is an Air Force officer assigned as a student at Air War College, Air University on the Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. A career acquisitions officer, Colonel Zhu served in engineering roles for the Joint Surveillance Target Attack Radar System, Missile Defense Early Warning Radars, Delta IV and Atlas V launch vehicles, and air-to-air weapon systems evaluation programs. After serving as part of the unit activation cadre to stand up Air Force ROTC at Yale University, she became an Air Force Strategic Policy Fellow at Headquarters, United States Air Force, and the Department of State. She later served in multiple roles under the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisitions in the Pentagon and was selected as the inaugural materiel leader of the Cyber Resiliency Office for Weapons Systems, responsible for a $360 million Air Force portfolio to protect air, space, and nuclear systems. Prior to her current assignment, she was executive officer to the Commander, Air Force Lifecycle Management Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Zhu.
Thanks, John, and I want to thank Carla for having me here tonight. It's definitely a privilege to be able to share this evening with you, and likewise, definitely a privilege to hear Colonel Hunt's inspirational story. It's not the first time I've heard it, but it never ceases to carry that heavy weight. I'm also here to share with you my personal story, although not as somber of a topic. It is about belonging and diversity and inclusion. And I'll start by asking, maybe you can relate. Remember if there's a time that you moved to an exciting new place or joined a wonderful new organization? Perhaps it was for college or for grad school, or moving to a new job where you had to reestablish yourself in a new city, go to a new place of worship, and meet new friends at work. For the initial days, weeks, months, you're an outsider. But after some time, you acquire this sense of belonging because you assimilate it into the new community. And you eventually become confident that the existing members now see you as one of their own. And that's a great feeling. But what if it doesn't happen quite that way? What if even after years, you regularly wonder if others still perceive you as an outsider, someone who's not from around here? And that is the part of my journey as a Chinese American immigrant serving in the military that I want to share with you today. I believe it will enrich your perspectives as you navigate, work in, or lead diverse organizations. To start, I'm a naturalized citizen, and I'm in the military, where we fill out forms a lot. And some of these forms ask me to specify whether my citizenship is by birth or by naturalization. And every time I see one of those check boxes, it reminds me that I'm not from around here originally. And therefore, am I really viewed by others as a true American? Seems absurd, right? One would think that having lived in this country since age 4 and having been educated only in American schools and having served in the Air Force on active duty for over 19 years, that I would have no reason to question whether I'm accepted as fully an American as my native born peers. But my experience growing up gave me a mindset that allowed those doubts to creep in every so often. For one, I didn't do any extracurricular activities in elementary or middle school. I didn't go to my first baseball game until high school, my first hockey game in college, and my first college football game at age 32. Yeah, as a kid, and even today, whenever my friends in my age group quote a Hollywood movie from our childhood or teen years, there's a 99% chance I've never seen it and therefore can't relate. Now, none of these experiences define a person as American, but not having had them in the same way my peers did made me feel like an outsider. And movies turned out to be a much bigger deal than I even realized. I remember in 2005, I was in my mid-20s. I had just arrived at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station for my second assignment. My squadron commander that year was also new, and he hosted a social gathering at his home one evening. So we went, and I remember a few of us gathered around the dining area with the commander, and we were chit-chatting. And the conversation naturally went to Star Wars. It was a space launch squadron after all. And not wanting to be disconnected from my group, I said the only thing that I could think of, which was, I'd actually never seen any of the Star Wars movies. My squadron commander reacted immediately, and I remember this vividly. He had a plate in one hand and a piece of finger food in the other, and he told the whole group, "You almost can't call yourself an American if you haven't seen Star Wars." Now, he was just trying to be lighthearted. He meant no harm. In fact, he probably would have made the same remark in response to one of his own children. But I was hurt. This was my squadron commander, the leader of the unit that I was so proud and excited to be a part of. And he was my second level supervisor. Suddenly, everything around me became muted. And all I could do was think to myself all the reasons I am American, but I love Star Trek, and I've attended American schools since kindergarten, and I took the oath of office, and I was completely disengaged from my surroundings and absorbed in this internal identity crisis that was triggered by one innocent comment. And to this day, I don't remember anything else that happened that evening. Now, over the next 10 years, as I moved to different parts of the country, I slowly overcame these feelings. But subconsciously and sometimes consciously, I hid parts of myself that may cause others to question my identity. For one, I love Asian food, but if you were to come over to my house for dinner for the first time, I'd probably serve you only American dishes. I watched Hong Kong action flicks. I dabbled into Chinese calligraphy. I took lessons on how to play this Chinese harp. But I would only share the fact I had these hobbies with people I knew well, my inner circle. Then I looked at my friends of different ancestries. In Boston, where I'm from, if you're Irish American, you celebrated that proudly, especially on St. Patrick's Day. And my third generation Italian American friends, they would jokingly blame all their quirks on saying, "Oh, it's just the Italian in me." And my Filipino American friends, they brought their chicken adobo and lumpia and shared them in the office happily. I thought to myself, well, they seemed quite comfortable and secure in their identity. So in 2016, it was a huge deal for me personally when I finally decided that it was okay to wear a red dress and have a Chinese tea ceremony at my wedding. I have finally overcome my mental demons. But the story doesn't end there. 4 months after the wedding, I deployed to IUD Air Base Qatar. Now, really at that time, I wasn't thinking about these things. I was quite comfortable with who I was. After all, I was about to spend most of our first year of marriage away from home in service to our nation. So how much more American can you get? And while there on the off days, we were allowed to go as a group to downtown Doha. So we did one evening, a couple of men from my unit and I went to the souks, these local street shops. And it's quite a touristy area and the shopkeepers are quite used to the Americans from the base there. And we went to one of these tiny little gift shops. The 2 men I was with walked in first and the shopkeeper greeted them together in English, exchanged some pleasantries, and then turned his attention to me and said, 你好吗? 你从中国来的吗? He just spoke to me in Mandarin. He said, how are you? Are you visiting from China? Now, he wasn't trying to be smart or funny. There are many Chinese tourists all over the globe. And I completely understand that in most of the rest of the world, nations are much more ethnically homogenous than in the US. So I wasn't offended or hurt that he assumed that I wasn't with the 2 men in my group, but I was caught off guard. And that exchange made me so aware that I look different. And so perhaps even when I get back home to the US, I probably shouldn't assume that every time I run into a stranger that they would automatically view me as American. That's a very uncomfortable thought. That was 2017. Since then, and especially recent times in light of the increased national discussions on race, I remain much more self-conscious about my appearance in terms of ethnicity than I ever was before that deployment. And so my journey to that sense of belonging is still ongoing. Now, what can you take away from this? 3 things. First, even leaders can struggle with confidence and still have that need for belonging. And that's okay. Second, words matter, especially if you're in a leadership role like my squadron commander was. Now, I don't mean that you need to run everything through this political correctness filter because that erodes authenticity, but just being cognizant of the different backgrounds and perspectives among team members will go a long way to helping you ensure that your message comes across as you intended. And finally, have the courage to bring up these topics. You have been hearing about diversity and inclusion a lot, certainly in the Air Force, but I'm sure in the private sector as well. I hear it on the news. And it's kind of become buzzwords. But to really realize the benefits of diversity, the environment needs to be one where talking about individual experiences and perspectives beyond the surface level is normal. And you can foster that. Perhaps you're the one that has a story, share it. And give yourself permission to ask others to share theirs. You might just make someone's day and transform your organization along the way. Thank you.
Great job, son. Thank you very much. Thank you to both Lieutenant Colonel Zhu and Colonel Hunt. Looking in the chat, we've got a question from Carla who asks, Colonel Hunt, this one's for you. Were you told of services available to you while you were deployed, or did you feel like getting home was the only way the nightmares would stop because nobody talked about it while deployed?
So fantastic question. And let me tell you that the Department of Defense and every service component is constantly preaching the message. It's just sometimes that people go, it's just words. They really don't mean it. They have to say that. Well, it's not. But unfortunately, that's the perception that is out there. Now, it's so prevalent out there. You know, in 2014, suicides alone in the military accounted for 480 people. That's the active duty component and the reserve component, the Guard, Air National Guard, Army National Guard. In 2020, That number was 571. And on average, 22 of our personnel that are retired commit suicide every single day. The message is out there. When I was, growing up in the squadrons, constantly heard the message from my commanders. When I was a squadron commander, I was constantly out there preaching my message, letting them know that it's okay. It never stopped being sent. I was telling Colonel Ritchie that I actually gave this speech to my squadron after one of my fellow squadron commanders committed suicide. None of us saw any signs, was always happy, was always going out of his way to help people, constantly talked about his love of his family. But nobody understood the demons that were going on inside of him and what he had been through. And he never asked for help. And none of us ever asked him if he needed help. Hopefully that answers your question, Carl.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I've got a question here for Son. As you've grown in your security and who you are as an American, as opposed to others' view of you, and that has ebbed and flowed with your experiences, how did the impact of COVID change this for you? Let's see what else we have here. The rest of the last question is, has your own growth allowed you to weather that better and help others? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Got it, John. I see them.
I'm sorry, I was a mess there.
Yeah, I mean, COVID has changed everyone, I'm sure, at some level or another. And Carla, if you're asking in terms of because of the origins of COVID and some of the discussions we've seen in news media on the topic, I wouldn't say that it changed me. I think because of my self-reflection from that deployment experience and that awareness, that was the inflection point that changed me and made me more aware. So when COVID and what we see in various discussions came along, I was more prepared and really more comfortable with who I was. I understand who I am, and I am less affected by how others may perceive me because I, number one, cannot control that, and number two, I may have the wrong idea of how others may perceive me. But I will share that seeing some of the violence that was reported, it does kind of give me a little bit of concern about my family, for example, and that ties into some feelings. It's really a feeling more than fear and genuine. I need to do something about it, but that feeling that there are still some that perceive either myself or my family members, parents, et cetera, as not necessarily part of the community. But at the end of the day, the people that I worked with, fellow professionals within the armed forces and the Department of Defense, everybody's very supportive and continue to be very cohesive. So there's that perception and feeling, and then there's the reality, which I thoroughly embrace. It's a very supportive reality for me.
Thank you. Hey, Bobby, I'm gonna give this one to you from Mr. Smith. He says, what role may civilian clergy play in the healing process of active and inactive military?
Yeah, so great question, because all of us are part of a community. And it's not necessarily that we attend services only on base. Many of us have a congregation downtown that we're a part of. The key to everything is knowing your people, being able to look at them and see when things are just not the same. So it's not every day that you get to see them, especially as the clergy. You get to see them on maybe on a Wednesday, maybe on a Saturday, maybe on a Sunday. But being able to recognize when things are changing in people or things that you're hearing. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, sir. Hey, son, I've got one more for you. Mr. McNeil made a comment that Rotary has a problem with diversity. So how do you advise starting these types of conversations in a work environment or in a situation like this or in a Rotary?
Right. So it is really being courageous and taking that first step. I remember when I was a material leader, equivalent of a sergeant command, I was a leader of an organization. And one day I just drew up the courage to ask one of the folks who worked for me about his experience, growing up as a Black man, to help me understand. Because as we were watching the death of George Floyd and everything else that was transpiring in the nation, I realized that even though I'm a minority, I don't understand fellow members of the organization who are minority members and their experience. So it was a one-on-one conversation that was uncomfortable because I didn't know what territory I was stepping into. But once I got through my own reservations and created an environment where both, the individual and I felt comfortable and have that trust, the individual really opened up, and that I learned so much just through that conversation. And from that conversation, we agreed that we need to share this with the larger leadership team. So we had a small group after that with 7 to 10 people. That was kind of the leadership team of our organization. It had the same conversation where that individual shared his experience, and everyone was very positive in their responses and having the opportunity to hear those perspectives that they didn't get to. Right? It was a diverse organization with different backgrounds, races, parts of the country that they grew up in. And that was a tremendous growth experience for myself personally and for the organization. So bottom line, it does take that little, that step of courage to start those conversations, start small, and then maybe you can build it, with a group.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you so much. Carla, I think we've exhausted everything in the chat. So I'll hand it back over to you. Thanks a lot again for letting us be here, and thank you to the two speakers. Did a great job.
Absolutely. I cannot say enough positive about the strength that both of y'all show in your personal lives and the growth that you've had in your outreach to us and to sharing with us, and just in general, what you have to offer from an educational perspective is phenomenal. I'm in human resources. I've been in human resources for 27 years. And I deal with situations revolving around mental health, with diversity and inclusion and acceptance, and how to have those hard conversations. And it doesn't get easier for me. It's difficult to understand where to step and how to open those conversations. And hearing what you have to say from your perspective helps me as I move forward, because tomorrow may be another day that somebody approaches me, or that I hear of something that I need to approach somebody. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to share and teaching me and teaching all of us. So I do really appreciate everything, all of you being here online today. Chris, for helping us get all of these people together. I think that was awesome. And each of you, thank you very much. I hope that you would reach out if there's any chance that you would be interested in joining us. I think that there's a lot that you could contribute as you travel through your careers and as you interact with other people. And I would love to have more opportunities to learn from you and to grow and to also reach other people. So just know that Chris has my contact information. He's welcome to share it with you, post it on whatever bulletin boards you would like. I would just love to learn more about each of you and hear more, and also be able to do more with you with the club. Bruce?
Could I have just a second?
Thank you, Carl.
First of all, I really enjoyed both speakers. Very enjoyable. Would it be permissible to share, of course we recorded, would it be possible to share the recordings with our rotators throughout the district? Would that be permissible?
I think that'd be a conversation with our speakers, sir. I know there was some hesitation initially, but I'm going to leave that up to them.
Well, that's fine.
Well,
You know,
Bruce, would you mind if I were to answer that question
Yes,
tomorrow, after having an opportunity to speak with our team and
Absolutely.
make sure that we're,
well,
I mean, obviously, both of these stories could just resonate with so many different
Right.
groups and audiences.
Yeah.
But as you also notice, some are very, deeply personal, and
absolutely.
some
But
maybe have not even been shared with some family members and stuff yet. So
that's fine. I'll
Yeah.
just let you communicate with Carla, and
we'll get back to you soon.
This it's two powerful stories there.
Oh, indeed.
So we'll find out. I did want to share, like I mentioned, we have challenges in diversity, and we've been wrestling with it for years. I brought in a prospective member Monday. He was a Black gentleman, and very articulate, nice guy. But when we sitting beside him and enjoying the conversation with him, I looked around the room, and there was 70 people, and then only one other Black guy. So I felt uncomfortable for him, and I don't know why, but he will make a great Rotarian if he decides to join. And so we know all about diversity, and we can get diversity in, but we can't keep the diversity because I don't think they feel comfortable. And so we've got a lot of work to do in that particular arena there. And then Colonel Hunt, I was in the EMS and fire service for 20 years, and I have just a snippets of what you're talking about. I was thinking one day, I've seen a lot of death, and pulling mamas and babies out of burning buildings and resuscitation. And I got to one, it doesn't bother me. I started to be concerned about myself. And then the next shift, I pull a friend of mine out of a wreck, and of course, he died, and it got to me. The next shift, I pull a baby out of a burning building, and it got to me. So I have a snippets of what you guys are going through, and I know it does get to you. So I appreciate your story.
And I also want to thank Lieutenant Colonel Harvey for your work moderating tonight. Great job. Thank you so much for your introductions and for your question hosting and everything else. I think you did fantastic as well, and I appreciate your contribution to this tonight. So, Chris,
Thanks so much.
I'm sorry, what? Go ahead.
No, I was just thanking you again for sharing your time with us. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a fantastic meeting. Chris, any parting words from you?
No, what makes the world go around is relationships. You've heard that mentioned a few times, and I'm really impressed with what it is that you're doing, what you're building, and I appreciate you bringing us in the early stages and letting us be a part of your team and organization. The stories always get to me, and I would just want to say how proud I am of the speakers and their courage to tackle these really difficult topics that nobody ever really wants to seem to discuss. But it's on everybody's mind, and it impacts all those who have the opportunity to hear and really learn from that, and maybe even save a life or help them deal with some challenges. So thank you both for your courage tonight and sharing your story. And I will get back to you, Bruce, on whether or not that could be shared to a wider audience. And Carla, thank you again very much. I'll stay on the line with you if there's any one-on-one discussions, and Liz, if you want to stay on also. But thank you so much for having us.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen for our four-way test so we can finish that. Chris, yes, absolutely. If you'll hang on for just a minute afterwards, I think that would be a good opportunity. Hang on, I'm going to close this and try this again. We're going to make this work right today. And hopefully y'all can see that. This is Rotary's four-way test. We end every meeting with this. Not everybody's a Rotarian, so they don't all have it memorized. And so I'm going to display it for you. I'll start it off. Please feel free to say it with me. Again, recognize we're going to echo and lag a little, but that's all right because participation is always awesome. But the four-way test is of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair
Is
to
it
all
fair to all concerned?
Will and better friendships?
Will build better goodwill and better friendships.
And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
So
Hoorah.
there you go. That's what we need. Yeah. So thank you all very much. I hope we have an opportunity to get together again with y'all, with other members of your group, and to learn more from you. And thank you for being the strength that we have behind us, for serving our country, for helping keep us free. What you do is incredible, and I appreciate that. And I hope you all stay safe, you and your families. So thank you very much.
Thank you for hosting us and inviting us.
Thank you.